It's Don here from the board. Thanks for coming along and checking out this video. So today we're going to be doing some stabilizer care, or maybe better called stabilizing, lubricating, stabilizing, sound dampening. I don't know. We'll see how we go. So let's switch over to the desktop to talk through what is happening today. Now, I've got on the desk here my down bubble PCB, and I'm going to be also applying the Band-Aid mod here. So what you can see is I've already applied the strips of Band-Aid material. So it's just fabric Band-Aid end bits that I've cut up, and I've laid it between the actual stabilizer holes. So the purpose of the Band-Aid mod is just simply to reduce hard surface contact from the bottom of your stabilizer stem against the actual PCB. So that was quite a arduous activity to cut and stick them on, so I did that before I started recording so we wouldn't be burning the time, and it was just less for me to have to edit into potentially a time lapse. Now I've already done that before on a previous build, just not for my own keyboards, so I thought, you know what, since this is going to be a prototype anyway for everything, I might as well go ahead and do that. Now this keyboard uses 9 stabilizers in total, as you can see, so I've actually got 9 stabilizers here. Half of them are one type of a clone, and the other half I believe is a cherry type, which you would need to clip the feet. So I'll show you what I'm talking about. Is that this is the cherry type, where if it'll focus, let's try it, there we go. It's got like a H formation on it. Focus isn't great there. So you normally clip the 2 thinner ones on that because they've got like these little peggy bits that kind of bounce, and that way you reduce what people commonly call mushiness of that. However, the other type that I've got here are clones, where they're actually in like a U formation. So if I can get the camera to focus on that instead. There we go. So they're in like a U formation, so they don't actually have the same base on the stabilizer, and therefore they don't require that clipping. However, you can still lube them to reduce the hard plastic on plastic contact. Now I'm going to be lubing them a little bit, but I'm not going to be doing the full blown stem lube, at least not at this current point in time. We'll see how we go. I might feel like doing it later. But I want to say thanks to Mitenolet, because he sent me this. And what this is just a length of the shrink wrap tubing that is going to go over the stabilizer wire. So hopefully this will do the trick, and all I've got is just a lighter to pass a bit of heat, because I'm not going to use a hairdryer and pull out my iron to do this component. Now, I was reading up on this, and on the Rama Works website, they've got a page in regards to dampening and lubing stabilizers, and they recommend about 6 millimeters. So, you know, I could try and measure that out, but I thought I'd try something a little bit different as well, because on the stabilizer wire, so I'm just going to move that for the moment. So on the stabilizer wire, when you count a 6 mil length on it, it's actually shorter than that entire end length, because these are about 10 mil. You can see it's about 10 mil long. So what I was questioning was, if you put the actual shrink wrap on it, the shrink tubing, would that actually prevent it from entering the stabilizer? Maybe, maybe not. And if it did stop it from going in, then well, that would make sense that you want to leave the end of it. But if it allows you to fit it, why would you bother measuring it as opposed to just sleeving it all the way in, cutting it, and then shrinking it down? So I'm actually going to try that and see if it'll fit inside, because if it does, then it means you don't have to worry too much about actually measuring it to fit, and that could just be something that will save you a bit of time. So essentially that is what I'm going to be trying to do. So without too much more ado, I'm going to stick that on the end. Now, noting that we still need to be able to clip these in. It should be okay to do that because I don't think it's going to impact its ability to clip in. So I'm going to get that in at the 90-degree point, just like that. I'll hold it. I'll get my snips and cut. So there we go. So that's fully sleeved, and that's definitely longer than 6 mil. So let's see, hopefully that I'm not going to melt this too badly.
What are you doing?
What am I doing? Daddy is heating up some shrink tubing.
Well, I'm getting a small chair to draw.
You're getting a small chair to draw?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, so that carbonized it a little bit, but that tubing is on. And that tubing... Hello? There we go. So it is shrunk down. It's gone all the way to the end. The end of it's actually also sort of puckered in, which is good, and it's not coming off. So here comes, I suppose, the litmus test on if it will actually fit or not. Well, it does, and it clips in, and it moves. So now I can actually feel that grinding on the housing, not the actual wire. I mean the the stem on the housing, which is really interesting because I think now with that shrink tubing, it's a lot more contact against the actual stem. So any vibration and movement that you would not normally feel is transferring through that shrink tubing into the wire. And so I can actually feel sort of that friction happening there. That's interesting. But, so I'm going to do the other side on this. I'm going to put on the PCB and I'll see how that actually feels. Because if it's not really too bad, then I might just do that rather than measuring sections. And so you'll see the bottom here that it's shrink tubed all the way into the actual the stem housing there. Cool. All right, so let's try that on the other side. Get that all the way in. Bend that down. Snip. Okay. So housing, I want it on that way in. And it goes, and clip. Is that going to move as well? That moves pretty freely. Alrighty, so that's the first one done. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put it on, let's put it on the numpad so that it's side by side and relatively, I can pop these out anyway, yes. So I do know that they are not lubed, but we'll pop them out anyway later to do that. Make sure they sit all the way in. Have I got them? No, I must have the holes the other way around. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so that's the dampened one. It's interesting. Is that how high they normally would go? Have I got the stems in the wrong way? I swear I've got the stems in the right way. Yeah, so they do extend all the way up, normally, but these are not extending all the way up. And it makes me wonder if it's because the tubing is doing it. Oh no, they do extend. I'm just not sort of really pulling it as high. Alright, maybe let's just put one of these in. Okay. Like that. And I don't have a stabilized 2U key here. Real smart. That was real smart of me. I do have one here. Alrighty, so here's a 2U. I honestly don't know if that's doing the full extension or not. So what I'll do is I'll put a untubed one into the other side, and then we can have that proper comparison. Okay, so they go all the way up. The switch is the same switch and mounted. And that won't work because, of course, the 2U is hitting it. Now, will an ISO enter contact it? Will not. Okay. So let's use an ISO enter instead. Okay, so the clearance there is it clears the entire top of the switch, whereas if I do this, yeah, it looks to be okay. It looks to be okay. It feels alright. They're moving freely. So I guess it was really just more, yeah, there's enough spring weight at least that's causing it to come up. So I'm not too worried. Tell you what, if it don't work and I have to desolder the whole lot though, I would be pretty annoyed. That I would be indeed. Now that said, these aren't, I don't know, they're staying in. They just don't look like they're super stable. I think the band-aids underneath are kind of making it a little bit tight. But these guys do lift up enough. They just are not coming up as high, but I suppose they don't really need to be. Alrighty. So that's part one. In regards to are they actually any quieter? That's a really good question. So let's just put that on without the actual switch, and I'm just gonna jiggle this next to the microphone. And then onto ones that don't have the shrink tubing. Yeah, it's definitely distinct. The tubing 100% makes a difference to the sound that it's generating. Yeah, there's definitely a lot less rattle with the shrink tubing. Not that I was skeptical of it, because scientifically speaking, physically speaking, common sense speaking, it made sense what it was trying to achieve, and something like that is easily achievable. So, yeah. Now in terms of lubing, so that one is actually, well, I don't need to pull that one out because I'm kind of satisfied with that. So I'm going to lube the stabilizers just by putting a little bit on the joint itself. Okay, on both sides where it actually clips in. And I'm just going to, of course, give that a bit of a jiggle to help that through. And the scraping sensation, I guess, is probably something that I might want to deal with. So I'm just going to try it and see if it makes much difference. I'm just going to grab that, I'm going to lift it, and just a smear on, well, maybe a little, there we go, on that side. On that side. On that side. So this grease is actually thick enough that you can, well, you probably can't see it, but now it's actually staying up by itself, whereas previously it wasn't. It was actually collapsing down. So it does actually have a certain stickiness to it, which is definitely making a difference. Okay, I'm just sort of spamming that in and out so we can get that distribution. It's definitely a lot quieter. Yeah, we are getting full extension as well when I'm checking that. So now if I put the keycap back on, I would say it does a little bit better, but not super duper noticeably different. But yeah, maybe it's worthwhile doing if you've got the time and inclination to, but at the same time I would say you don't have to kill yourself about it if, well, not kill yourself about it since it's not that big a deal, unless if you're very pedantic. Worthwhile doing, it's like a couple of seconds. So if you can spare the lube and the time, then sure, why not? Alright, now in terms of clipping the feet, just for completeness, I'm going to pull one of these ones apart so we can just quickly go over that on clipping the feet. So there is, it's very hard to see with my hand in front of everything as well. Alright, so there's that spindly one, and you can see, so the front, bottom right, and the back top left, they've got these little hooks on them. They're the bits that you want to clip because they essentially will cause you bounce and mushiness because they're thinner, and the bits sticking out will essentially, the hook bits will flex. So just with the clips, I'm just going to go chop and chop, and then So that's chopped those two bits off, but there's still this bit in the middle that you can see that's sticking out on the left hand side, and this, well, that's the leftover of the bottom right hand side, that nub. So you want to take care of that as well, so it's nice and flat. So that way you're not going to get uneven contact and variation. So once again, I can just use my snips to do that. You want flat cutters so that it actually cuts on a straight surface. And so the end result of actually doing that will be, it kind of looks like that, where I've actually taken that left hand side and that right hand side is already flush. What you're kind of seeing is it's a little bit of an optical illusion, because it's actually that the bottom surface further down rather than where the actual that top bit is. Yeah. So that's what you want to do to clip cherry style stabilizers. So I might as well make sure I do it on the other one before I forget, and then it can go to the other pile. Alright, yeah, so that's just some very simple stabilizer care, I suppose. If you want to shrink tube it, and if you want to lube it, and if you want to clip the stabilizer legs so it reduces mushiness and improves its response. It's a bit of a payoff in that, well, if you're going to reduce its springiness, but then you're going to put like a band-aid underneath it, you're no longer getting a hard surface underneath, which means you will actually get a little bit of that springiness against the band-aid. So it's kind of the dampening, the sound and whatnot payoff against that. Okay, make sure I orientate these the right way. Okay, so they go back there that way, and that's gonna go that way. I know that people do actually lube these before they put the wire in and whatnot, but I'm just like, that's a real pain. I think what I've done here, when I just lubed it in situ, worked just as well. So no issues with that whatsoever. And I'm getting dielectric grease all over my hands. So I'm going to pop out this one that I haven't done. And yeah, once I wrap up here, I'll go through and load up the rest of these stabilizers, and hopefully in the next little bit I'll have the time and I can solder this down bubble together and get it closer to completion. So if you like this kind of stuff, please hit that like button. Of course, if you want to let somebody else know what I've done, what I've tried at least, not that I'm saying that I'm the innovator here with this concept, please hit that share button. And of course, if you've somehow found this YouTube channel and you're not subscribed and you like mechanical keyboard stuff, then please hit that subscribe button down below as well. Don't forget, we have a podcast series that is companion to this channel. Yeah, and you can find us in, I think, the video description, or search for The Board Podcast. So once again, thanks very much for checking out this video, and of course, as usual, until next time, happy clacking. Okay, so what I've kind of realized, and I know that I already finished the video in that first part, but this is a errata to it, is that there is definitely rhyme to reason on why they're saying the 6mm. This is the best part about what we do here, is we push those boundaries and we check and confirm, right? So what's happening here is, on some of these stabilizers, it's actually not returning to where the switch is resetting. Now on the cherry style stabilizers where I did the leg clipping, the actual tolerances on how much space is between the wire and these stems is so tight that you actually have trouble getting them in. So that's why you need to, like, you just can't get these in. On the clones, the tolerance is a lot worse, and therefore you can actually get these in. So that's really, really interesting. So I'm just, scoring that and pulling that shrink wrap off there. Now I don't know how much that is because I didn't measure it, but yeah, that's close enough to the 6mm. And now the actual wire does go in. So that's just one thing to be aware of, is that the tolerance on these cherry ones is actually quite important. So if you don't get that right, you will get sticky stabilizers, as I've discovered just then. And the second thing on that is the return aspect. So even with the clones that don't have as good a tolerance, because of that tolerance, some will return and some will not return. So see, that's now moving nice and freely because I've chopped the end of that off. So there is bare metal showing in there. Whereas if I didn't, then it wouldn't allow that to happen at all. So I'm more than happy to admit making mistakes and how important these kind of considerations are, but being retentive about it and, you know, going, well, 6mm, that's a very specific reason, and I suppose, you know, the folk at Rama Works had to be specific for a reason, because there was a reason for it. So now I get to cut a little bit off each one of these. The second thing that I was talking about was the ends wrapping. So I'd cut it off there and it sort of puckered down. That little tail bit on the better tolerance is actually catching on the inside of the housing. So when it goes in like that, as it's coming up, that end bit is actually catching on this top surface and stopping that return. So it's good to know, and for me to make the mistake and you to not have to suffer that same result. So I'm going to end up popping all of these out and cutting and trimming. And this one that I had lubed earlier is going to be a pain, so I'm going to leave that for last because I'm going to get lube all over everything. So yeah, let's actually reassemble this one as well, and then I can sort of make that confirmation even for myself. My daughter is singing happy birthday in the background when it's nobody's birthday, because kids love birthdays. Because it means cake, it means party, it means sweets. So she's all geared and ready to go for whoever's birthday it is next. Okay, so let's put that one in here because we can. Yeah, that moves super freely now. Let's pop that back on. Wait. There we go. Yep. Fantastic. So, my apologies. I hope people watched this all the way to the end, because if you don't, and you go and do what I did earlier, you're going to have to take everything apart to take that end off it as well, just like I am doing right now. So yeah, hopefully you've caught this errata, and I'll try and put it in the actual title so that people will know that they need to watch it to the end, because there's obviously been a horrible mistake made by myself, yours truly, and 6mm is definitely the go. Alrighty, so I'm just going to end up trimming that off it. So you should end up with a bit of bare metal on the end like that, to get the best out of your stabilizers and that dampening effect. Alright, that's it. I don't want to add any more fluff. Thanks for checking out the errata. Good luck with your stabilizers. Cheers.